Charles Edmund Cullen, known as the Angel of Death, was born on February 22, 1960, in West Orange, New Jersey. He had a troubled upbringing, defined by poverty and tragedy. His father died when he was just a few months old, and his mother passed away in a car accident when he was just a teenager. Cullen struggled with severe depression from an early age, and after serving in the U.S. Navy, where he was bullied and ostracized, he found a career in nursing. However, his mental instability and erratic behavior followed him into the medical field. Cullen began his killing spree in 1988 while working as a nurse in New Jersey. Over a 16-year period, he killed patients in multiple hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. His method was to administer lethal doses of medications such as digoxin, insulin, and epinephrine, often slipping undetected due to medical errors being common in hospital environments. Cullen targeted both critically ill and recovering patients, making his crimes difficult to detect. Despite suspicions from colleagues and numerous job dismissals, he continued moving from hospital to hospital, exploiting the lack of communication between institutions. He was finally caught in 2003 after suspicious deaths at Somerset Medical Center led to an internal investigation. 2 colleagues helped authorities gather evidence, leading to Cullen's arrest. He confessed to killing at least 29 patients, but is suspected of killing over 400, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in history. In 2006, he was sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. He remains incarcerated in New Jersey today, and his case exposed severe flaws in the healthcare system, leading to stricter regulations to prevent similar crimes in the future. Robert Pickton, born on October 24, 1949, in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada, is one of the country's most notorious serial killers. He was raised on a pig farm alongside his brother and sister in a dysfunctional household. Their parents were reportedly neglectful, and Pickton developed socially awkward behaviors early on. The filth and isolation of the farm, combined with his troubled upbringing, contributed to the disturbing environment his crimes would later unfold. Pickton began luring women, primarily sex workers and drug-addicted women, from Vancouver's downtown east side to his farm in the early 1990s. He would offer them money or drugs, then bring them back to his property, where he assaulted, killed, and dismembered them. Many victims were fed to his pigs, and there was evidence that human remains were later processed with pork and potentially distributed. Though women had been going missing for years, the connection to Pickton wasn't made until 2002, when police executed a search warrant on his property related to illegal firearms. During the search, they uncovered personal belongings of missing women and human remains. Pickton was arrested and charged with multiple counts of killing. He eventually confessed to an undercover officer, claiming he had killed 49 women and wanted to make it 50. In 2007, Pickton was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree killing. Though he was originally charged with 27, he was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years, the maximum penalty in Canada. Pickton is still alive and remains incarcerated, and his case sparked widespread criticism of police inaction and raised awareness about the marginalization of vulnerable women, leading to changes in how missing person cases are handled in Canada. His crimes remain a grim reminder of systematic failures and human cruelty. Rodney Alcala, born on August 23, 1943, in San Antonio, Texas, was an American serial killer whose charm and intelligence masked a deeply disturbed personality. He moved to Los Angeles with his family during childhood but was abandoned by his father at a young age. Alcala later served in the U.S. Army before being discharged for mental health reasons after a nervous breakdown. He studied at UCLA and appeared to lead a normal life, but his hidden obsession with control and violence soon surfaced. Alcala began his killing spree in 1971, targeting young women and girls. He lured his victims by posing as a professional photographer, convincing them to pose for him before attacking. His method of killing often involved non-consensual sex, strangulation, and severe beatings. Some victims were strangled until unconscious, revived, and then strangled again, a sadistic pattern that earned him the nickname the Dating Game Killer, after he famously appeared on the TV show The Dating Game in 1978 during his killing spree. He was first arrested in 1979 after the disappearance of 12-year-old Robin Samso. A tip from her friend led police to Alcala, and a search of his storage unit uncovered hundreds of photos of women and young girls, some of whom remain unidentified to this very day. Alcala was convicted of Samso's killing and later linked to at least 7 confirmed killings, though investigators believe the true number could be much higher. Alcala was sentenced to death in 2010 for 5 killings in California, having already spent years on death row due to previous overturned convictions and retrials. He died of natural causes on July 24, 2021, at the age of 78 while still incarcerated. His case remains one of the most chilling examples of a killer hiding in plain sight. Young Xinhai, born on July 29, 1968, in Zhongyang County, Henan Province, China, was one of the country's most prolific and brutal serial killers. He was the youngest of 4 children in an impoverished farming family, and he was known for being intelligent but introverted, with him dropping out of school early and drifting through various low-paying jobs across the country. He also had a criminal record, including time in labor camps and prison for theft and attempted non-consensual sex, which appeared to intensify his violent tendencies. Yang began his killing spree in 2001 and continued until his arrest in 2003. He traveled across multiple Chinese provinces, breaking into homes at night to commit his crimes. He targeted entire families, often using tools like hammers, axes, or shovels to commit his violent killings. In many cases, he also performed non-consensual sex with women before or after killing them. He typically left no witnesses, killing everyone in the household, including children. In total, young Xinhai confessed to 67 killings and 23 cases of non-consensual sex across 10 provinces. His attacks were premeditated, and he chose his victims at random, claiming his motive was revenge against society due to his failed relationships and life hardships. He was finally arrested on November 3, 2003, during a routine police check when it was discovered he was a fugitive. After DNA and fingerprint evidence linked him to several crime scenes, Yang confessed in detail. He was swiftly tried and found guilty, and on February 14, 2004, he was sentenced to death. Young Xinhai was executed by shooting just days after his sentencing, and his crime shocked China and led to heightening awareness about public safety and mental health issues. He remains one of the deadliest serial killers in modern Chinese history. Charles Ng and Leonard Lake were a sadistic pair of serial killers who operated together in the early to mid-1980s in California. Leonard was born on October 29, 1945 in San Francisco, California, and Charles was born on December 24, 1960 in British Hong Kong. Leonard had a troubled upbringing filled with psychological issues and a fascination with survivalism and adult content. Charles came from a wealthy but strict family, eventually moving to the US on a student visa and joining the Marine Corps, where he was later dishonorably charged for theft. Their killing spree began around 1983 and lasted until 1985. The two men shared a twisted ideology inspired by a desire to survive a nuclear apocalypse, which they continued with horrific fantasies involving the kidnapping, non-consensual sex, torture, and killing of women. They built a bunker on a remote property in Wilseyville, California, which they called their survivalist retreat. Victims often included entire families, and the women were kept alive to be sexually abused before being killed. The methods of killing involved shooting, strangulation, and torture, and the crimes came to light in 1985 when Charles was caught shoplifting at a hardware store. Leonard attempted to intervene, but police ran a background check and discovered he was using a fake ID. When arrested, Leonard swallowed a cyanide pill and died on June 6, 1985. Charles fled to Canada, but was later arrested that year for shoplifting. After a lengthy extradition process, he was returned to the US in 1991, and he was tried and convicted of 11 killings in 1999 and sentenced to death. He remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison, and authorities believe the duo may have killed up to 25 people, with evidence including videotapes and human remains found on the property. Tsutomu Miyazaki, also known as the Otaku Killer or the Little Girl Killer, was a Japanese serial killer born on August 21, 1962, in Itsukaichi, Tokyo. He was born prematurely with a rare deformity that fused his hand joints, leading to social isolation and bullying during childhood. Miyazaki struggled with severe emotional and psychological issues, made worse by a dysfunctional family life and the deaths of several close family members during his adolescence. He withdrew further into himself, developing a fascination with horror films, adult content, and child exploitation material. Miyazaki began his killing spree in 1988 and continued until 1989. Over the span of 1 year, he abducted and killed 4 young girls between the ages of 4 and 7. His methods were gruesome, as he would strangle his victims, sometimes mutilating or cannibalizing their remains after they were dead. with him keeping their body parts as trophies. He also sent taunting letters to the victims' families and recorded parts of his crimes on video. His obsession with media and violent imagery earned him notoriety in Japan's press as a deeply disturbed otaku, a term used to describe obsessive fans of anime and manga. He was caught in July 1989 after being confronted by the father of a girl he was attempting to abduct. When police searched Miyazaki's home, they found a vast collection of disturbing videotapes, including recordings of his crimes and thousands of adult and horror films. Miyazaki was found legally sane and fully responsible for his actions, and he was convicted of 4 counts of killing in 1997, with him being sentenced to death. After years of appeals, he was executed by hanging on June 17, 2008, and his case shocked the nation, leading to increased public concern over media influence and mental health. Ed Gein, born on August 27, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin, was an American killer and body snatcher whose gruesome crimes shocked the nation and inspired numerous fictional killers in pop culture. He was raised in a repressive and isolated household by a fanatically religious mother who preached that all women, except herself, were sinful and corrupt. His father was an alcoholic, and Ed endured a lonely childhood, dominated by his mother's strict and abusive influence. After the deaths of his parents and older brother, Ed became increasingly isolated, living alone on the family's rural farm in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Though not technically classified as a serial killer by the FBI's definition, since only 2 confirmed killings were linked to him, Gein is infamous for his gruesome activities involving corpses. He killed 2 women, Mary Hogan in 1954 and Bernice Worden in 1957. However, what truly horrified investigators was the discovery that Gein had dug out numerous bodies from local graveyards and used parts of their corpses to create household items, clothing, and trophies, including masks made of human skin, skull bowls, and a suit made from a woman's torso. Gein was caught on November 16, 1957, after Bernice Worden disappeared from her hardware store. Suspicion quickly fell on Gein, and when police searched his home, they uncovered a house of horrors filled with human remains. He was arrested and found mentally unfit to stand trial at first, confined to a mental institution. In 1968, he was deemed competent and tried for Worden's killing, found guilty, but was declared legally insane and committed to the Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Ed Gein died of respiratory failure due to cancer on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. His story inspired many horror films, including Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Silence of the Lambs. Richard Trenton Chase, known as the Vampire of Sacramento, was born on May 23, 1950. He had a troubled upbringing filled with strict discipline from his parents and early signs of psychological instability. As a child, he exhibited behaviors associated with the McDonald triad, which are bedwetting, arson, and cruelty to animals, with these traits often being linked to future violent tendencies. By his teenage years, he developed substance abuse issues, and in his early adulthood, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He became obsessed with blood, believing his own was being poisoned, which led to his fixation on consuming the blood of animals and, eventually, humans. Chase began his killing spree in December 1977, and his first known killing was the shooting of 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin. However, his crimes escalated in January 1978 when he brutally killed Teresa Wallen, a pregnant woman, inside of her home. He engaged in necrophilic acts, drank her blood, and mutilated her body. Later that month, he committed a mass killing Evelyn Myroth, her 6-year-old son Jason, her 22-month-old nephew David, and her friend Danny Meredith. He continued his ritualistic mutilations and even took the infant's body with him, later discarding it. Chase was caught after police received a tip from a concerned woman who had seen his description in the news. When authorities searched his apartment, they found overwhelming evidence, including blood-stained walls and remains of his victims. He was arrested and charged with 6 counts of killing, and in 1979, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. However, on December 26, 1980, Chase was found dead in his prison cell after overdosing on prescribed antidepressants. His crimes remain among the most horrifying in American history, showcasing the dangers of unchecked mental illness. Corll Panzram was born on June 28, 1891, in East Grand Forks, Minnesota. His early life was defined by extreme hardship and violence, as he was raised in a strict and abusive household, and he began committing crimes at a young age, frequently running away and engaging in theft and arson. By his early teens, he was sent to reform schools where he endured severe beatings and sexual abuse, experiences that fueled his deep hatred for humanity. His criminal career escalated into burglary, arson, and eventually killings, developing into a nomadic lifestyle where he traveled across the United States and internationally, committing heinous acts wherever he wanted. Panzram claimed to have started killing in 1915, though his confirmed killings occurred between 1920 and 1928. He primarily targeted sailors, drifters, and young boys, often luring them with promises of work or shelter before performing non-consensual sex and killing them. His methods of killing were brutal, including shooting, strangulation, and drowning. He also admitted to setting fires, sexually assaulting countless victims, and harboring an intense desire to kill as many people as possible. His crimes spanned multiple countries, including the United States, Angola, and Panama, making him one of the most elusive and dangerous criminals of his time. He was eventually caught in 1928 after being arrested for burglary in Washington, D.C., and during his imprisonment, he confessed to numerous killings, showing no remorse. In 1930, he was sentenced to death for the killing of a prison employee. Panzram openly welcomed his execution, even threatening to kill more people if left alive. On September 5, 1930, he was hanged at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, and his final words were chilling, saying, "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around." His story remains one of the most disturbing accounts of pure, unapologetic evil in criminal history. Joachim Kroll, known as the Ruhr Cannibal and the Ruhr Hunter, was born on April 17, 1930, in Hindenburg, Germany. Raised in a poor and dysfunctional family, Kroll was the youngest of 9 children. He grew up during World War II, experiencing severe deprivation and witnessing the horrors of war. He was described as intellectually challenged, with an IQ below average, and struggled with social interactions. As he matured, he developed disturbing sexual fantasies involving violence, which later escalated into killing. Kroll began his killing spree in 1955, with his first known victim being a 19-year-old woman named Irmgard Strell. Over the next 2 decades, he performed non-consensual sex and killed at least 14 people, though the true number is suspected to be much higher. His victims ranged from schoolgirls to middle-aged women, and he typically strangled them before engaging in acts of necrophilia and cannibalism. Kroll would cut victims of flesh from his victims to cook and eat, believing it would help him save money on groceries. His methodical approach and transient lifestyle allowed him to evade capture for years. His crimes were finally uncovered in 1976 when police investigated the disappearance of a 4-year-old girl named Marion Ketter. A neighbor reported clogged pipes in Kroll's apartment, and authorities discovered human remains blocking the plumbing. Inside his home, they found more body parts stored for consumption. Kroll was arrested and readily confessed to his crimes, showing no remorse. In 1982, he was convicted of 8 killings and sentenced to life in prison, and he died on July 1, 1991, in prison from a heart attack. His case remains one of the most grotesque in German criminal history, highlighting the depravity of a truly remorseless killer. Robert Hansen, known as the Butcher Baker, was born on February 15, 1939, in Esterville, Iowa. He had a difficult childhood, growing up with a controlling father who forced him to work long hours in the family's bakery. Hansen was shy, socially awkward, and suffered from severe acne and a stutter, making him a target for bullying. He developed deep resentment toward women, specifically those who rejected him. As he grew older, this resentment manifested in violent fantasies of revenge. Hansen began his killing spree in 1973, targeting women in Anchorage, Alaska, where he had moved years earlier. His victims were primarily sex workers and dancers, whom he lured with promises of money or employment. Once in his control, he would kidnap, sexually assault, and then release them into the Alaskan wilderness, where he hunted them with a rifle. Hansen was meticulous, keeping trophies from his victims, and marking burial sites on a map. He managed to evade capture for years due to his reputation as a well-liked local businessman. However, in 1983, a 17-year-old victim named Cindy Paulson escaped and provided police with crucial details. Authorities obtained a search warrant for Hansen's home, uncovering weapons, jewelry from victims, and his marked map. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Hansen confessed to killing at least 17 women, though he was suspected of killing more. In 1984, he was convicted and sentenced to 461 years in prison without parole, and he spent the rest of his life incarcerated and died on August 21st, 2014, at the age of 75 due to natural causes. Hansen's crimes remain among the most chilling in American history, especially due to his calculated and sadistic approach. Patrick Kearney, known as the Trash Bag Killer, was born on September 24, 1939, in East Los Angeles, California. He had a troubled childhood, filled with severe bullying due to his small stature and shy demeanor. As a result, he developed violent fantasies at an early age, imagining himself taking revenge on those who tormented him, before returning to California as an adult, where he worked as an engineer. Despite maintaining a stable career, his personal life concealed a dark secret. Kearney's killing spree began in 1962, though his confirmed killings took place between 1975 and 1977. He targeted young men and teenage boys, often picking up hitchhikers or meeting victims in gay bars. His method was calculated, as he would gain their trust, lure them into his vehicle, and then shoot them in the head, often while driving. To avoid detection, he dismembered their bodies and disposed of them in garbage bags along highways and remote locations, earning him his infamous nickname. Authorities began connecting the killings when multiple victims were found discarded in a similar fashion. In 1977, a breakthrough came when police identified Kearney as a suspect, and realizing the net was closing in, he and his partner fled to Texas, but later turned themselves in. Kearney confessed to 21 killings, though he claimed to have killed up to 28. To avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. As of today, Patrick Kearney remains alive, serving his sentence in California. His crimes stand out for their cold efficiency and lack of sadistic torture, setting him apart from many other serial killers. Dean Corll, born on December 24, 1939, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, became one of America's most infamous serial killers in the early 1970s. Corll's upbringing was defined by his parents' divorce when he was young, and he lived with his mother, who was reportedly strict and controlling. In the 1960s, Corll moved to Houston, Texas, where he established a successful candy business. This venture allowed him to gain the trust of local children, whom he would later prey on. Corll's killing spree began in 1970 and continued until 1973, during which he kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and killed at least 28 young boys, primarily aged 13 to 17. He and his teenage accomplices lured victims to his home, where they were subjected to horrific abuse and torture before being killed. Corll's methods included strangulation and, in some cases, dismemberment, often burying the bodies in remote locations or in his own backyard. Corll's reign of terror came to an end in August 1973 when one of his accomplices, 17-year-old Elmer Wayne Henley, fatally shot him during a struggle. Henley subsequently confessed to the killings and led authorities to the remains of many victims. Corll was never tried or convicted, as he died at the hands of Henley, and Dean Corll remains a chilling figure in criminal history, with his crimes being the subject of numerous documentaries and books. The case shocked the nation and raised serious concerns about child safety and the effectiveness of law enforcement. Donald Henry Gaskins, also known as Pee Wee Gaskins, was born on March 13, 1933, in Florence County, South Carolina. He endured a deeply troubled upbringing, filled with severe neglect, abuse, and abandonment. Nicknamed Pee Wee due to his small stature, Gaskins was frequently bullied and turned to crime at an early age. He spent much of his youth in reform schools and later adult prisons, where he developed a reputation for violence and manipulation. Gaskins began his known killing spree in 1969, although he claimed to have started much earlier. He is infamous for claiming responsibility for over 100 killings, though authorities officially confirmed around 13. He targeted hitchhikers, sex workers, and anyone he deemed vulnerable. His methods varied and included stabbing, shooting, drowning, and poisoning, and he often referred to his random killings as coastal kills, which he carried out while traveling along the highways of the southeastern United States. He also committed more personal killings, targeting people he knew to silence them or settle disputes. He was arrested in 1975 after an associate, who feared for his own life, informed police about Gaskins' crimes. Human remains were discovered on his property, confirming several of his confessed killings. He was sentenced to death in 1976, though the sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment when the U.S. Supreme Court temporarily invalidated the death penalty. Incredibly, even behind bars, Gaskins continued his killing. In 1982, he killed a fellow inmate using a makeshift bomb, making him the only death row inmate in U.S. history known to have killed another inmate while awaiting execution. For this crime, He was sentenced to death once more, and he was executed by electric chair on September 6, 1991. His life and crimes remain among the most disturbing in American criminal history. Fritz Haarmann, known as the Butcher of Hanover, was born on October 25, 1879, in Hanover, Germany. He had a troubled upbringing with a controlling father and an overprotective mother. From an early age, Haarmann displayed erratic behavior and was sent to a military academy, though he was later discharged due to mental health issues. As he grew older, he developed a criminal record that included theft and sexual offenses, spending time in and out of prison. By the early 20th century, he became a well-known figure in Hanover's underworld, working as a police informant while secretly preying on young boys. Haarmann's killing spree began in 1918 and lasted until 1924. He targeted runaway boys and young men, luring them to his home with promises of food, shelter, or employment. Once inside, he would overpower his victims, biting into their throats to kill them, a method that earned him the nickname the Vampire of Hanover. Afterwards, he dismembered their bodies and disposed of their remains, often throwing them into the Leine River. Rumors spread that he sold human flesh as meat, though this was never confirmed, and he was finally caught in 1924 after human bones were discovered in the river, leading to an investigation that pointed to Haarmann. When police searched his apartment, they found overwhelming evidence, including blood-stained clothing. He confessed to at least 24 killings, though the true number may have been higher. Haarmann was convicted and sentenced to death, and on April 15, 1925, he was executed by guillotine. His crimes remain among the most notorious in German history, shocking the nation with their brutality and exposing the vulnerability of young, homeless victims in post-war Germany. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on any of the serial killers I discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see a part 5 or more videos like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.